Hey, it's Mars. I'm just testing out some video recording, thinking about doing some recordings maybe with the girls, doing a little podcast action, and I'm testing it out to see how it goes. One thing I can tell already is that we'll need to work on a very simple background, something a little more interesting than my curtains and a wall, and we'll have to work on things like sound levels and video quality and other things that are important when you want to share videos with other people. What would we talk about in these videos? Some of the things I've listened to myself in other podcasts and other videos I've watched that I find really interesting are just explanations of what people have been working on, specifically crafty folks who knit and sew and spin and crochet and draw, and also interests and activities like yoga and reading books. A lot of people sharing what they're reading and enjoying. And in listening to those experiences, I always get a little tidbit of information that I am happy to have been exposed to. So maybe we can share some things like that, and other people will be happy that they listened to and watched us and got their own tidbits. So the things that I'm doing lately that are in that crafty realm are knitting. I've done some crochet recently, not a whole lot, but really I've gotten back to my knitting, even so far as organizing my yarn before the new year, buying some new yarn while I was traveling, and knitting some projects. I've actually finished a few things in the last few months. So sharing the process and the materials and patterns and any kind of stories behind making those things would be part of the plan. I've also taken up drawing recently. Never really considered myself much of an artist. It wasn't something that I spent a lot of time on when I was younger, but it has always been something that I admire, a talent that I admire in others. And I've really been using it as a way to unwind and to balance out work stress and other stress, and I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I am finding that I look forward to doing it daily, and I get great inspiration from seeing what others do with pen and ink, and just being very creative in that whole artistic realm. And I don't fancy myself, an artist who would produce things for pay or anything like that. It's currently strictly a way to unwind and untangle my brain. Working with color a lot as well while doing that. I was sharing some of that on Instagram and on Facebook with my friends, and I have the most amazing friends. They see the things that I'm interested in, and they show their support in multiple ways. For example, I was given these coloring books, a whole set of them from one of my friends, and a couple of my friends gave me some really, really cool books that you can use for what's being known as adult coloring now, and I've already started working on some. Just gives me an excuse to spend time quietly working on patterns and working with color, which I love. This particular drawing here was done with these markers, which are a favorite of mine. This brand actually is becoming a favorite of mine. These are Sakura brand Koi watercolor brush pens, and for now I only have this set of 12 sort of primary basic colors, but I love them. I use them a lot. I've been very tempted to buy the larger set, which I think has 48 markers in it, maybe more, but I'm trying to be good about not becoming a collector of things as I once was, and just using what I have for now, but really enjoying that whole exercise. So that's one of the crafty things I've been doing lately. The other is knitting. So I finished a couple of small projects recently. One of them was a hat, which I'll share with you another time. Currently on my knitting needles, is a pair of socks. So this pair of socks is going to be for me. I'm knitting them from a very simple free pattern that I found online, which I can share with you. And it's done in a worsted weight sock yarn, so a little bit heavier than typical sock yarn, although I would consider this a lightweight. So here's where I am in that process so far. I'm doing 2 socks at a time on my Knit Picks needles. These are my 40-inch cables, nice and long cables, so that I can do both socks at a time in the round. I started at the toe, so I'm doing them from the toe, knitting them up past the heel, obviously, and up into the leg portion of the sock. I love knitting socks this way because I get 2 socks that are exactly the same, and I can work on them, for a period of time and make progress on both. And it avoids the temptation to make one sock and then get bored with that project and not make the other one, which is known in the stitching world as second sock syndrome. So it helps with that. I like magic loop knitting. I'm a fan of the Knit Picks needles and the yarn. This is actually Knit Picks Wool of the Andes superwash yarn in a worsted weight. I consider this to be a light worsted. I'm getting about 6 stitches to the inch on a size 6 or 4 millimeter needle. So I'm a fan of Knit Picks as a brand. Their yarn and their tools have worked really well for me since I've been knitting. So as I said, these socks are for me. I have big feet. I wear a size 10.5 shoe. So it's a lot of knitting. It's a lot of stitches. But I'm enjoying them because they're just plain stockinette. No patterning on them. I used a free pattern, as I said, just as a guide, but I really just worked with my gauge to figure out the fit. The pattern called for an 8-inch circumference around the widest part of the bottom of your foot, and my foot is about 9 inches around, but 8 inches works well for some negative ease so that they'll fit nice and snug. And I've tried them on. They fit very well. I'm actually at the part where I'm separating for the heel. So the part of the sock that will go up the back of my heel is being knit separately than the instep, which is the part that's on the top of my foot. I'm really enjoying having something that doesn't take a lot of thinking on the needles. I just take my little project bag with me. This is also something I've had for a long time. I've been knitting since 2005, so going back to a lot of things that I used to use very regularly. This is my project bag from No Knits, K-N-O-W, knits.com, and I've had this since 2005. I've had to replace the drawstring since that time, which I just kind of makeshift used a piece of rope cord that I had when the other drawstring fell apart, because I use this a lot. I've even put this on my wrist and walked around with it knitting, and it travels really well. The material is very strong and sturdy, so it's traveled with me to multiple countries and states, and I love this bag. I actually hardly use any other project bag, but I think I may be in the market for a new one soon. I may even sew myself one. Speaking of sewing, that's something that I intend to venture into at some point this year. I happen to be one of those people that loves to collect crafty tools, even when I'm not proficient at the actual craft. As an example, I have a sewing machine, I have lots of fabric, I have blocking board and a yardstick and thread and needles and all the accessories for sewing, but I don't really sew very much. I have repaired things, I've made very small items, but I've never done really a garment with any of those things. So this year, 2016, I intend to correct that. So instead of just being a collector, I want to be a maker of things. And I'm very fortunate that at some point I was able to gather all of the items that I would need, so now I can just get to the process of making. You may have noticed the shirt that I'm wearing. It's my Girls Getaway shirt, and that takes me to another topic of making. This is a collaborative project between myself and a friend of mine, and the Girls Getaway takes place every year in Utah. For the last couple of years we've done this. That is myself and 3 of my friends, and it started with an invitation out to Utah from a very good friend of mine. to come and spend a few days and go to a spa at the Red Mountain Resort. Highly recommend this resort in Utah. It's a beautiful property with just the best kind of atmosphere. I can't say enough about it. Look it up online, Red Mountain Resort in Utah. And that getaway was such a great experience the first time around that we decided we'd make it an annual girls' trip. I love being a grown-up because you get to do grown-up things like that sometimes, where you just take some time away with friends and go enjoy a really nice string of days. There are classes, fitness activities, great food, and lots of things to enjoy. I mean, on top of a gorgeous backdrop of scenery, plenty of things to do. But this t-shirt was a crafty collaboration of sorts. The text that you see on here and the layout was actually created by a friend of mine. His name is Nancy. She is Emerald Lane on Instagram. And I asked her if she would use her amazing artistic skills to come up with a design for a t-shirt for our second annual girls trip, which was last year. And I told her that if she did the crafty design work to put on the shirt, I would get the shirts and have them printed. And we gifted them, 2 for us and 2 for our other friends that join us on that trip. And it worked out so great. Everybody looked beautiful in their shirts, and the other girls really, loved having them and loved the idea that we collaborated on it and gifted them shirts that are now souvenirs of that trip. So I love stuff like that. We're planning to do something similar this year, maybe a different item. And now that I have followed Nancy's footsteps into more drawing and painting and creating, I think we will come up with something great. So that just sums up some of the things I've been working on and things that are coming. I, again, was only doing this as a sort of a tester teaser to see what it would be like to do this sort of video review of what I'm up to in my crafty world. And I appreciate you taking the time to take a look. I'll be back again sometime soon to talk a little bit more about what I'm doing. Take care.